Okay, so we will let me record here also if it's possible. Record. Okay, so last time we discussed verse number 1, the first verse. We discussed about Vacho Vegam. So now we will go to Manasa Krodha Vegam. Before we do that, some recap, some questions I will ask. And let's see how many of you can or how much you retain basically. So in the first verse, what we read, what are the three ways of learning? What are the three ways of learning that is Prabhupada describes in the
By hearing, by
By
experience, and
by
by
seeing,
seeing others.
Alankar Prabhu is there, Hare Krishna. By seeing, by hear, first is by hearing, then second is by seeing,
and by experience.
Reading.
by experience. And which is the generally considered the best way to learn?
Experience.
By hearing.
Hearing. Hearing.
Experience.
No, that's the best teacher.
Yeah, but if you learn through hearing, then you can avoid so many
First class
problems.
intelligence.
Yeah. If you hear and you learn, that's a better way of learning. So, what is the analogy of elephant's bath that Prabhupada explains in that verse? Somebody like to describe that analogy? What is the elephant's bath? What does it describe that elephant bathing?
Like Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So like there is no meaning of, because elephant, he washed his, he took shower and again he went into the mud and he got all the mud on his body. Same thing, like if we are hearing so many things and then we are not implementing in our life, so it's same thing happened to us. Is this correct?
Yeah, that is, you can take it like that, but also it means that you commit sinful activities, then you atone for it.
Atone for it.
Atone means you repent and you say that I will not do it again. Then after some time, you again do the same thing. So,
Right.
So what is the use of atonement in that context? Prabhupada was describing that. So that is compared to an elephant taking bath. So how can the urge to speak be detrimental to spiritual life? What way it can be detrimental to spiritual life?
Talking about Krishna.
No, detrimental means how can it be harmful to spiritual
Or
life?
like toad
Toad
and the snake.
Yeah.
Prabhupada describes the toad and the snake analogy. So, but what happens when we speak other things? Then we lose our interest.
We don't listen.
Hmm?
When we speak, we are not listening. So if you just one-sidedly are talking, there is no receptive value to it. And sometimes I feel like if you keep talking, you can't even process what you're saying. Sometimes, it's just as a reflex, you're talking without thinking through.
Yeah, and you speak non-Krishna conscious things, not related
It leads to the death. I mean, he's saying that in this verse that if you're talking about the material things, it will lead to the just inviting you death, like as we gave the example of toad and snake. But because if you talk about the things in this world, which is leads to the temporary, like, it's not freshen up. It's like in Bhagavad Gita, there is a verse like Janm Karm Chame Dibam. If you talk about Krishna, then it leads to the liberation, or it leads to because this is a transcendental topic, right? And if you talk about the material thing, which is temporary, and we must divert from the devotional path, we just indulge into the topic of this material world, which is no gain.
Correct. So temporary things have temporary value. And of course, we have to live our life. So we have to be practical. We have to talk whatever is necessary, but not unnecessarily talking about, because it takes away our time and our devotion also. That will come in the next verse. Prajalpa, it is called Prajalpa, unnecessary talking. So there is a nice verse I'd like to share with you in the Bhagavatam. Hopefully you can see this. This is Srimad Bhagavatam 2:1-2. So there it says, Shrota Vyadini Rajendra, Nrinam Santi Sahasrashah, Apashyatam Atmatattvam Griheshu Grihamedinam. So this verse is spoken to Maharaj Parikshit, I think by Sutta Goswami. He says, there are Sahasra Saha means there are thousands of topics to hear about and talk about. But if it does not give any real benefit, apashyatam atmatattvam means if it is not related to self-realization, those who are blind to the apashyatam means those who cannot see the goal of life, they have so many subjects to talk about. So the translation goes like this: those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society, O Emperor. So we talk so many things, and it is like the toad croaking. Prabhupada says the snake cannot generally see the toad, but when it croaks, then the snake knows where the toad is. So from the preface, what does our advancement in Krishna consciousness depend upon? What does Prabhupada say?
Our attitude.
Attitude of the follower.
Yes, it depends on the attitude of the follower. Correct. Which are the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan? Somebody like to name them? These are some basic questions which we are discussing. Alankar Prabhu joined for the first time. So,
Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Raghunath Das Goswami, Raghunath Bhatt Goswami, Gopal Bhatt Goswami,
and
and who left?
Jiva Goswami.
Jiva Goswami.
Jiva Goswami.
so why should we study? So as we discuss, you should also read the book and the purport also yourself. So why should we study Goswami's literature? What does Prabhupada say? What is the advantage of reading Goswami's literature in the preface? What is the importance of Goswami's literature, like the 6 Goswami's literature? Why should we study? So that we can understand the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So the conjugal affairs of Radha and Krishna.
They have understood the heart of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So,
Rupa Goswami has understood the heart of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when we study the books written by Rupa Goswami, the literature, which is Nectar of Instruction, is also one of them. So then Lalit Madhav, Vidagdha Madhav, and so many others. Then we will be able to understand the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. When will spiritual advancement become impossible?
If mind is in control,
Yes, Prabhupada writes in preface, there is a statement that
sense
unless one controls the mind and the senses, spiritual, he says here, unless one controls his mind and senses, one cannot make any advancement in spiritual life. So in all spiritual affairs, one's first duty is to control mind. So what are the some of the spiritual affairs we have? What is like a spiritual affair? In all spiritual affairs, one's first duty is to control his mind and senses. So what is a spiritual affair? What does that mean?
The devotional activities,
It-
The
chanting.
devotional activities, like chanting, hearing, remembering, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, like that. Okay, so please, I mean, some questions will come from this also in the, so in our test after we finish the first verse. So we talked about Vacho Vegam. Today we'll talk about Manasa Vegam. Manasa Vegam means controlling the mind, the urges of the mind. So mind also has a force. Mind is considered the king of all the senses. And unless we control the mind and senses, as Prabhupada says, we cannot make spiritual advancement. So first desires come in the mind, right? And then they're implemented by the karmendriyas and the jnanendriyas. Right? We discussed that. What are the 5 karmendriyas which are described? 5 karmendriyas are.
So these are karmendriyas, right? The hands,
they are Jnanendriyas.
Huh? The hands.
the
Sight,
senses, right?
sound.
hands, legs,
Yeah, the legs,
uh,
hands, legs, genital,
speech,
speech. Yeah.
anus, like that. So they are described as the karmendriyas by which we act. So the desire come in mind. Let's say I want to buy an iPhone. So then I will go to Best Buy. My legs will take me to Best Buy or wherever, I don't know, or Amazon. I'll use my hands to go to browse the internet and find the best price for iPhone. And then I'll go to Amazon. So first the desire comes in the mind. So in the Bhagavad Gita, um, Krishna says mind can be our, what does he say about the mind? Mind can be our best friend
Or
or it
enemy.
can be the worst enemy. So let's see the verse. Uh, so we'll discuss today more about the mind and then see how it goes. So in 6.6, Krishna is saying, Bandhur Atma Atmanastasya Yena Atmaiva Atmana Jitah Anatmanastu Shatrutve Vartet Atmaiva Shatruvat. For one who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So a friend is one who acts for our self-interest, means who has our interest in mind and who has our interest at his heart. And somebody who acts against our own self-interest, that is an enemy, right? Who doesn't like us, So our self-interest is what? What is our self-interest? Our self-interest is because we are part of the Supreme. So the interest of the part is to serve the whole. So in this 15th chapter, 7th verse, Krishna says, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. We are ansha of Krishna. So our self-interest, the part self-interest lies in serving the whole because we are ansha. The example is given in the Srimad Bhagavatam in 4:31:14. I'm sharing all these verses. That Yatha taror mula nishechanena tripyanti tatskanda bhujopashakha pranopaharat yathendriyanam tatheva sarvaharanam achyutaicya. It says that as pouring water on the root of the tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, and everything else, and as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, simply worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of that Supreme Personality. So if we water the root, then all the parts of the tree are nourished. Similarly, if we give food to the stomach, then all the parts of the body are nourished. So the soul is part and parcel. We say part and parcel of Krishna. So our interest, if we serve Krishna and if Krishna is satisfied, then we automatically become happy. That's the understanding. So serving the whole, the part automatically gets nourished. So Krishna is saying that one should deliver oneself with the help of one's mind. Uddharet atmana atmanam, natmanam avashadayet. This is previous to 6.6. Atmeva hi atmano bandhur, atmeva ripur atmanaha. One must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. In Srimad Bhagavatam, when in the pastime of Nrsingadev, and Prahlad is talking to Hiranyakashipu, and Hiranyakashipu is accusing Prahlad of siding with the enemy because he's considering Vishnu as his enemy, and he's telling Prahlad, you are siding with the enemy who killed your uncle, Hiranyaksha. Then Prahlad Maharaj says, very nice verse. He says, Prahlad, this 7, 8, 9, Srimad Bhagavatam. Prahlad Maharaj continued, my dear father, please give up your demoniac mentality. Do not discriminate in your heart between enemies and friends. Make your mind equipoised towards everyone, except for the uncontrolled and misguided mind. There is no enemy within this world. When one sees everyone on the platform of equality, then one comes to the position of worshipping the Lord perfectly. So mind can be our enemy, and that's if it is uncontrolled and misguided, that is our enemy living within us. So, so the key factor is that the mind's happiness is not my happiness. We should think like that. That mind's happiness may not be my happiness, the soul's happiness. So we'll read the purport, Srila Prabhupada's purport on this. So the restlessness or fickleness of the mind, manovega, is controlled when one can fix his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna. The Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Leela 22:31 says, Krishna Surya Sama, Maya hoy andhakar, yaha Krishna taha nahi maya radhikar. Krishna is just like the sun, and Maya is just like darkness. If the sun is present, there is no question of darkness. So in our life, when there is darkness, we cannot fight with the darkness. We just have to turn on the light, switch on the light or open the window and let the sunlight come in. Then automatically darkness goes away. So Krishna, this is the Prabhupada. Prabhupada used this slogan in his Back to Godhead. Godhead is light, if you see on the top, right? Alankar Prabhu, you know that Godhead is light, nescience is darkness. Like that. He took it from this shloka. So if the sun is present, then there is no question of darkness. Similarly, if Krishna is present in the mind, there is no possibility of the minds being agitated by Maya's influence. The yogic process of negating all material thoughts will not help. So we cannot make the mind blank. But he says mind should be engaged in service to Krishna. We cannot just keep it all blank like impersonalists. They want to meditate on nothing. That is not possible. Prabhupada is saying the yogic process, that is good if there are nonsense thoughts coming. If you want to take out the nonsense thought, that's okay. But it will not sustain. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the 12th chapter, 5th verse, Krishna is saying that this process of impersonal path is very difficult. Klesho adhikataras tesham. The verse. Klesha adhikataras tesham avyakta asakta chetasam. So this impersonal path is very difficult, especially for those who are embodied. Avyakta hi gatir dukkham dehavadbir avapyate. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult. So we want positive things. So just not avoiding the negative things, but we also want to do the positive things. So that comes from Krishna. So to try to create a vacuum in the mind is artificial. The vacuum will not remain. However, if one always thinks of Krishna and how to serve Krishna best, one's mind will naturally be controlled. So we have to individually see how to engage the mind in Krishna's service. It may be different for different people. Somebody likes to do some cooking at the temple. Somebody likes to read Srimad Bhagavatam. Somebody likes to hear about Krishna. Somebody likes to do some kind of service. Some likes to have association of devotees and discuss about Krishna. Some like to preach about Krishna. And we can do all different kinds of service. Not like one service we do always. We can do kirtan. Kirtan can also engage. DT service. So there are different ways in which we can. And so everybody, we have to individually figure out how we can engage the mind in Krishna's service. And ultimately, we have the Mahamantra. The Mahamantra will deliver the mind. This is a practical way, right? If you have any trouble with your mind, I mean, whenever I start chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Even if you don't have the beats, you just start chanting Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And hearing, then you will see after some time your mind has become quiet and pacified. So mantra means, man means the mind, and tra means it delivers the mind. So this is the way the sound vibration will deliver the mind. Prabhupada says, let me see this, he writes in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita. So he says, the mind is naturally restless and going hither and thither. Because the whole thing depends on the mind. That's why we are discussing so much on the mind. Because Mind is the central point of the yoga system. In any yoga system, it is to bring the mind to Krishna. So that's why we are discussing a little bit more on the mind. So here he says in the introduction, the mind is naturally restless, going hither and thither. So many thoughts cross our mind in a day, but it can rest in the sound vibration of Krishna. So it can rest. So if you, with this sound of Krishna's holy name, will make the mind peaceful and quiet if we actually concentrate on it. So that's why we have this, we call anavritihi shabdat, anavritihi shabdat. The last Vedanta Sutra says, anavriti. Avriti means to covered, and anavriti means we can become uncovered from material existence by spiritual sound, and especially the sound of this Hare Krishna Mahamantra, which is the most effective way to clean our heart in this age. So another way to deal with the mind is, how to control the mind is, I am not the mind. Prabhupada also said one time, Vishnujan Maharaj asked, I think it was Vishnujan Maharaj who asked Prabhupada, how can a person who is always absorbed in family and this, and how can, no, he said, yeah, when I chant, my mind wanders everywhere. How can I control them? How? The Prabhupada says, where is the question of mind? He says, you chant with your tongue and you hear with your ears. So where is the question of mind? So we can neglect the mind. We can neglect the mind. The mind is not me. So, I mean, I'm just saying, but we have to practice. It's difficult. So many times, let me open a verse, a very nice verse Prabhupada is given in the Bhagavatam about how you can control the mind. So this is verse number 1. Let me find this quickly. There is one easy weapon with which the mind can be conquered: neglect. So he says, and this is Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 11th chapter, verse number 17. This uncontrolled mind is the greatest enemy of the living entity. If one neglects it, means neglects to control the mind or gives it a chance, it will grow more and more powerful and will become victorious. Although it is not factual, it is very strong. It covers the constitutional position of the soul. O king, please try to conquer this mind by the weapon of service to the lotus feet of the spiritual master and of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Do this with great care. So he says there is one easy weapon with which the mind can be conquered: neglect. The mind is always telling us to do this or that. Therefore, we should be very expert in disobeying the mind's orders if it is not favorable for Krishna's service. Anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya varjana. Right? We say, so mind is always giving us so many things, telling us, you do this, do that, do this, do that. But he's saying, therefore, we should be very expert in disobeying the mind's orders. Gradually, the mind should be trained to obey the orders of the soul. Imagine if we have full mastery over mind, we become Goswami, right? That is the goal, Prabhupada says, to become a Goswami. Then how smoothly our life will go, right? We will not get carried away by the mind and do things which are not favorable. And so the goal is to become a Goswami. We have to engage the mind. Of course, without engaging in Krishna service, we cannot become a Goswami. But we can neglect the mind's order. Gradually, the mind should be trained to obey the orders of the soul. It is not that one should obey the orders of the mind. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati used to say that to control the mind, one should beat it with shoes many times just after awakening and again before going to sleep. Not literally like that, but you chastise. Like we have Sam, what is that? Kautilya's way of dealing with an enemy. Sam,
Dand
Dan,
Ramadanda.
Sam, Dan,
Dand Bhed.
and Danda is last, Bheda and Danda, like that. So it says you make truce with your enemy, Sam, or you give some charity, Dan, and bribe the enemy, or you can divide the enemy and conquer, Bhed. And then if nothing works, then you sow Danda. It doesn't mean there is punishment. So mind is like that. If it does not obey, you try this way, that way, that way, this way, that way. Then you show the danda. So Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's method is like that. He's saying you have to show the danda, shoe to the mind. As soon as you wake up, you beat it. Means not like take a shoe and start beating your mind like that. But in your mind, it says, mind, now I'm going to chant Hare Krishna. I don't want you to bother me. You just leave me alone. I'm going to do my chant or whatever you're going to do, spiritual activity. So you just leave me alone. You have troubled me so many times. I'm not going to listen to you. And then again going to sleep. You can beat it with broom or with shoes. So he says, in this way, one can control the mind. This is the instruction of all the Shastras. If one does not do so, one is doomed to follow the dictations of the mind. So if we don't do this kind of thing, that another bona fide process. So this is one way. And he says another way is also to strictly abide by the orders of the spiritual master and engage in the Lord's service. Then the mind will be automatically controlled. So, so these are some, our acharyas are giving some tips on how to control. They have fully controlled their mind, Prabhupada, and they are fully controlled. So they are telling us by their experience how we should control the mind. And so by the weapon of neglect, we can control the mind. So many things Prabhupada says. In Bhagavad Gita in 634. Let's see what he says. Now we hear about this, so we have to now implement. Implementation is another thing. So he says in 634, right? It's a nice statement.
Mana Krishna, right?
Yeah.
Chanchalahi Mana Krishna, Pramati Bhavad Dhranam.
Tasyam Graham Vayuri Vasadushkaram. When Arjuna is described the Ashtanga Yoga by Krishna, then Arjuna speaks this verse that, oh Krishna, this is very difficult. My mind is restless and it is very agitating. Pramati, agitating. Balavad, very strong, and Dridam, very obstinate. And to subdue it is more difficult than controlling the wind. So Prabhupada writes in that, yeah, it is even more difficult to capture the turbulent mind. The easiest way to control the mind, as suggested by Lord Chaitanya, is chanting Hare Krishna, the great mantra for deliverance in all humility. So we say we have to try, we have to cry. Try and cry. Right? We are discussing this. We have to try, and at the same time, because our try is not going to be enough, we have to cry for Krishna's mercy. So, that means all humility. So we are helpless. We are helpless against Krishna's Maya. Devi Esha Gunamayi, Mama Maya Durataya, Mame Vaya Prapadyante Maya. So we have determination, but at the same time, we need Krishna's help. That is Damodar Leela. The two things we need. So if we control the mind, then super soul is already reached. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. If we control the mind, then super soul is we already attained Krishna. Like that. So, yes. So it is the mind that is the root cause of our transmigration. In 8.6, it is saying, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam yajantyante kalevaram tam tam eveti kaunteya sadatat bhava bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So it is our subtle body that takes us to our next cross body. And then Krishna says, Anta Kalicham. So if we can remember Krishna, then that is the success of life. Bhagavatam says, Etavan Sankhya Yogabhyam Swadharma Parinishtaya Janmalabha Parapumsam Ante Narayana Smriti. So at the end of life, so we have to somehow remember Krishna. then that's the success of life. Of course, we say if we can't remember Krishna because we are usually in a coma situation, we can't remember, then Krishna will remember us also. It is mentioned like that. If we have done our best, and then Krishna will help us. So this is some of the, so many things. And then in the 8th chapter or 6th chapter, Krishna says, you can conquer the mind by suitable detachment and practice. Right? He says, Asanshayam Mahabaho Manodurnikraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Konteya Vairagyena Chakriyate. Pull up that verse. So Abhyas means those things that are favorable for devotional service, we accept. And Vairagya means we reject those things that are not favorable, like this 4 regulative principles we have. If we indulge in those 4, breaking those 4 regulative principles, then we will not be able to remember Krishna. And then Rupa Goswami will say in the next verse, furthermore things which are not favorable. So this is the verse 635. Asanshayam Mahabaho Manodurnikraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kantya Vairagyena Chakriyate. Lord Shri Krishna said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. And Prabhupada says here that you can control the mind by hearing of the transcendental activities of Lord Krishna is therefore expert treatment for the mad mind. So we should hear more and more Bhagavatam, like, and Krishna's pastimes. And eating the foodstuff offered to Krishna is the appropriate diet for the suffering patient. This treatment is the process of Krishna consciousness. So when we eat that food that is cooked by, there is a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that our mind will become polluted. Malina hoy man, right? When we eat, because what we eat also affects our thoughts. Like last time, I think Komal was asking about this, that sometimes we don't chant nicely. So what can be the reason for not chanting nicely? So it can be one of these things, offenses. So here is saying, Vishayra anna khoile malin hoy man. Malina man hoila nahe Krishnara smaran. When one eats food offered by a materialistic man, one's mind becomes contaminated. And when the mind is contaminated, one is unable to think of Krishna properly. Because the consciousness of the cook also affects, it mixes in the food, and then when we eat it, then that also affects our consciousness. So then also we may not be able to control the mind. There is one pastime or some thing about how one time in Vrindavan, all the sages, when they woke up, suddenly they found they had very passionate desires, and they were thinking, how did we get all these passionate desires, so many passionate desires? And then they found out that, oh, this food they ate last night was not proper, was maybe cooked or sponsored by somebody not in good consciousness, and that's why all these things can happen. So this is also another way. These are small things, but it affects our mind. So we'll take a little break here. It's already 30 minutes. So Alankar Prabhu has something to say. Yes, sorry, I didn't see the raised question before.
No worries, Prabhu. Yeah, so Prabhu, I had a question regarding this. So the consciousness of the chef goes in the food, right? You're saying it's a small thing, but it has a big impact. But then, how do we know whose consciousness is what and how my consciousness has been affected, because so many times I eat, food which may not have been cooked by devotees, or maybe devotees also, but I don't know their consciousness. But sometimes it doesn't really, I don't have any way to tell that, okay, yeah, I'm feeling more passionate because I'm already not at that level. How can I tell the other person's consciousness is right or not, and how it has impacted my consciousness?
So one is also that we have our conditioning from our past life, right? So we have a certain conditioning, but we don't want to aggravate that conditioning, right? We don't want to make it worse. So even though I may be eating all good stuff, but still I may be having difficulty controlling the mind. It doesn't mean that, okay, but because I have my past conditioning also that is also a factor. There are many factors which affect the mind. So we can't pinpoint and say, okay, this is the only reason, but we want to exclude. We want to take out all those things that is going to impact my mind in a negative way. Already it is affected in a negative way. So I don't want to, what is that word? Exacerbate, right? Worsen it. Right?
Exaggeration.
Huh?
Exaggeration, right?
Not exaggeration. There is exacerbate, right? Means to make it worse. So already exaggeration is to like say something big about something small. Yeah. Uh, so that is the idea. And then of course I have to do my own due diligence and I have to chant my rounds nicely and all these things. But this is the ideal thing. I mean sometimes we may not have. So I was using this word exacerbate means make a problem, bad situation, negative feeling worse. So already if you are in, and then on the top of it, and who is in good consciousness, who is not in good consciousness is difficult to say. But generally, I mean, if devotees are chanting their rounds, they are following the four regulative principles, and reading Srila Prabhupada's books. Many temples, like I used to live in the Bangalore temple before all this happened. The cook used to get up before Mangalarti and he used to chant his 16 rounds before he starts cooking because he has to start cooking breakfast for so many brahmacharis living in the temple. So he will chant his rounds. We know Lord Chaitanya also said that I will not eat my food at anybody's house who is not a
Vaishnav.
Lagpati.
Was it not chanting?
who is not a Lakpati.
Lakpati, yeah.
Lakpati.
Lakpati means not that he has lakhs of rupees, but one who is not chanting 1 lakh rounds, means 64 rounds at that time. So he says, I will not have my food at anybody's house. So chanting is very important. And then, yeah, we don't want to judge anybody, devotees, and make offenses like that. But yeah, so if we chant, if we eat,
So I have a follow-up question. Like, okay, even if it is not cooked in pure consciousness or like in the right consciousness, um, is is it not like when we offer it to the God, then like it will become purified? I feel like because I see like many people who are not chanting or are not devotees, but in their home they have a tradition to offer it to God and then like eat that. So
yeah, I mean,
I feel
Krishna can
like
accept.
indirectly, like still, like you will, like because then you'll be consuming the remnants,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah, it ultimately depends on your consciousness. Like somebody can be pure also in their heart and they have devotion for the Lord and they offer it to the Lord with devotion. Then Krishna is not obliged. He doesn't say, but this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said like this. So I'm just saying this. But anybody who offers with devotion, Krishna will accept it. Whether, you are like, yeah, Krishna can accept. He's not bound by any principles. But generally, he says Patram Pushpam. So chanting is basically to increase our devotion to the Lord. So Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati Tadaham Bhakti Uparitam Ashnami Prayatatmanaha. So Bhakti everywhere he's saying, one who offers me with. So when we chant, our consciousness changes, we become more devoted like that. So, but yeah, Krishna can accept from anybody. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, if you offer tulsi leaf in the offering, then whatever discrepancies may be there, Krishna will accept. Like that also, he says like that. But
So I have a question here.
hmm,
Basically, so we should hear from pure devotee. We should associate with pure devotee, and also the food cooked by like very pure devotee. So, right.
correct. I mean, that is the ideal. So, I mean, we are ourselves may not be pure devotees. We can't expect that everybody, uh, and who is pure, who is not pure. We cannot really say much about others' consciousness. So, we don't want to judge everybody and say like that. But this is general principle that if we,
Yeah.
yeah.
So also like should not the like advanced devotee be cooking in the temple something like that?
Hmm? advanced devotee cooking in the temple?
Yeah, so, I mean, that's already the case, but anyway, never mind.
Yeah, so those who are cooking in the temple should be chanting their rounds, because everybody is taking prasadam, so their consciousness is affecting everybody else also. So they should be chanting their rounds, they should be like following the principles, like, or at least they are trying to become pure, in their heart. So this is a verse that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is saying like this. So I'm okay. So anything else?
Yeah, Prabhuji, I also have one other question. I get sometimes confused with this impersonalism because I know we condemn most of the time impersonalist path. But then in Bhagavad Gita, it's mentioned, right? There are three types of transcendentalist, and one of them is like impersonalism too. So does that mean that even like if somebody is following the path of impersonalism, is going to like attend God or
So there is impersonalists and there is Mayavadis. There's a little difference between impersonalists and Mayavadis. So impersonalists, they don't accept, or Shukdev Goswami, we say, was an impersonalist before, right? Before he heard Bhagavatam shlokas. So impersonalists are more attracted to the impersonal feature of the Lord, like the all-pervading Brahman effulgence. So they are more attracted to that feature of the Lord. But anybody who becomes situated in Brahman, as Lord Brahma says, I think, let me pull up a verse. They don't attain the perfection. They fall down from that position also, unless they meet a devotee. So in 10 to 32, it is described in the prayers by the demigods. Ye anye arvindaksha vimukta maninas tvayi ashta bhavad avishuddha buddhaya aruya krichrena param padam tataha patanti yado anadrita yusmad angrahaya. Prabhupada would quote this verse many times. So he says, someone may say that aside from devotees who always seek shelter at the Lord's lotus feet, there are those who are not devotees, but who have accepted different processes for attaining salvation. What happens to them? In answer to this question, Lord Brahma, another demigod, said, O lotus-eyed Lord, although non-devotees who accept severe austerities, so impersonalists do severe austerities and penances to achieve the highest position, may think themselves liberated, their intelligence is impure. They fall down from their position of imagined superiority because they have no regard for your lotus feet. So, what are the three aspects of absolute truth? Who can say? Sat,
Satchitanand?
Chit Anand.
Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Right. So, in the Brahman realization, you only get the Sat aspect of the absolute truth. In the Paramatma, you get Sat and Chit. And Bhagwan realization, you get Sat, Chit, and Ananda. And Jiva by nature is looking for Ananda. So unless we come to Ananda, Ananda comes from having a relationship. In this world also, they found out that the source of happiness is having good relationships. So if we don't have good relationships, then we will not be happy. So ultimately, when we have relationship with the Supreme Lord, that is what will satisfy. So the impersonalists, they have neglected that relationship with the Supreme Lord. So although they have realized the impersonal aspect of the absolute truth, they cannot be fully. They are transcendentalists because they have understood that they're not like karmis who want to enjoy their senses and um, sense gratification. They have given up. They are austere. They have given up sense, but they're not fully self-realized. But they are called transcendentalists. So that's how they are called transcendentalists. Is that what your question was?
Yes, thank you, Prabhuji.
So
Actually, I got confused. Like I thought, like impersonalist is the same as Mayavadi. That both are
so
same.
the
But
difference is the impersonalists, they are more attracted to the Brahman feature of the Lord, whereas Mayavadis, Maya means illusion and Vad means philosophy. So Mayavadis say their philosophy is that everything is illusion. Krishna's form is also illusion. Everything is illusion. Brahma Satya, Jagat Mithya. They say everything is illusion, only Brahman is the reality. So there is a little difference between impersonalists and Mayavadis, but kind of similar because both of them do not in touch with the Supreme Lord's personal form. Yeah. So that is thing. Okay, so mind can be controlled when we detach it from sense gratification also. So Prabhupada writes that sometimes in sense gratification there may be some feeling of happiness, but that feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. So, so like that. So sometimes we think our mind's happiness is my happiness, and that is how uh, I go towards I conduct my life, but it is not like he says in the here it says this is in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 3 verse 39. While one enjoys sense gratification, it may be that there is some feeling of happiness. So now we cannot live without sense enjoyment. So that should be regulated. It's not like we are denied sense gratification. We can have sense gratification keeping Krishna in the center. So like for instance, we can partake of prasadam, which is first offered to Krishna. So that is a bona fide way. But of course, then we'll come to how tongue should be controlled also. While one enjoys sense gratification, it may be that there is some feeling of happiness, but actually that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. Because why? It will make you addicted to that happiness, and then that happiness will bring you back in another material body. Because it's not spiritual happiness, it comes from the material body. And because you want that happiness, so then you get another material body to experience that material happiness. And then again, when you get a material body, then you also get, it's a package deal, right? You get birth, death, old age, and disease simultaneously with it, all the other miseries also. So that is why it is considered the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer, because the jiva wants to enjoy unlimitedly without any interruption, but the material body gives only limited enjoyment. And so in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about the austerity of the mind. So we'll read that verse because it's all related to the mind. So we are looking at all the verses and all the things about mind. So in 17.16 in Bhagavad Gita, we share this. He says, Mana prasada somyatvam maunam atma vinigraha bhava sanshuddhir iti etat tapo manasam uchyate. What is this? Okay. To make the end satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purifications of one's existence are the austerities of the mind. So he says, to make the mind austere, we'll read this, it's nice short purport, but very powerful. To make the mind austere is to detach it from sense gratification. It should be so trained that it can be always thinking of doing good for others. So when we are in sense gratification, then we are always self-centered, right? We are always thinking about what's in it for me. We are not thinking about others' happiness. The best training for the mind is gravity in thought. One should not deviate from Krishna consciousness and must always avoid sense gratification. To purify one's nature is to become Krishna conscious. Satisfaction of the mind can be obtained only by taking the mind away from thoughts of sense enjoyment. The more we think of sense enjoyment, the more mind becomes dissatisfied. In the present age, we unnecessarily engage the mind in so many different ways for sense gratification, and so there is no possibility of the mind's becoming satisfied. The best course is to divert the mind to the Vedic literature, which is full of satisfying stories, as in the Puranas and the Mahabharata. So we should divert our mind to Srimad Bhagavatam. That's why Nityam Bhagavata Seva. One can take advantage of this knowledge and thus become purified. The mind should be devoid of duplicity and should think of welfare of all. Silence means that one is always thinking of self-realization. The person in Krishna consciousness observes perfect silence in this sense. Control of the mind means detaching the mind from sense enjoyment. One should be straightforward in his dealings and thereby purify his existence. All these qualities together constitute austerity in mental activities. So, So we say like that, right? 3 things we should be satisfied with, 3 things we should not be satisfied with. What are the 3 things we should be? Because austerity of mind is one. What are
So
the 3 things we should
Wealth
not be
from
satisfied? 3 things we should not be satisfied with.
What's that?
Well, let's start with that.
What's this, Mama?
that's our sadhana
Oh,
and the charity we give. And I forgot the third one.
So
After
Nam Jap, scriptural study,
Yeah, studies.
and the charity we give for Krishna consciousness. We should not be satisfied with these things. We should not think, oh, I've done enough. Actually, Bhakti Charu Maharaj told me one time, I asked him, so what is the instruction? He says, don't think you have done enough. He said like that. So don't think you have done enough. So we should, of course, now it is not a question of quantity, but it's also a question of quality. So quality, if quality is good, then quantity will also be good because we'll get taste and then the quantity will increase naturally if the quality is good, or if you have good association, or if we are in association of those who are relishing Krishna consciousness, then we will also feel blissful, right? We'll feel happy in Krishna consciousness. So
So we should have a greed for it, right?
yeah, we should have greed, and greed develops by associating with those who have greed. So those who have greed, if you associate with those who don't have the greed, then your desire will go like down. This is natural, right? I mean, in every aspect of life. That's why I say that people change their homes from one school to another, they change their whole residence because they want their child to study with those who are good students, right? They want to be in good association so that their child will also become a good student, so that, he will not get diverted or sidetracked. So association is the key. Without association, we cannot become Krishna conscious. So association is very important, and good association, where there is desire to serve Krishna. There is a fire of Krishna consciousness like that. So somehow or other, we have to fix our mind on Krishna. Yena kena prakarena mana Krishna niveshayet. It is, Rupa Goswami says, Yena kena prakarena. Somehow or other, we have to fix the mind on Krishna. Then that is the ultimate instruction. That is the highest instruction of everything that we do. Let me show you a verse. It says the essence of all advice. Smartavya satatam Vishnu. Right? So here in the Madhya Lila, described. It's from Padma Puran. Smartavya satatam Vishnu. Vismartavyo na jatuchit. Sarve vidhi nisheda syur etayor eva kinkara. Smartavya means remembering. Satatam, of course, we cannot remember Satatam. That also will consider what if we can't remember Krishna constantly, what we should do. That Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita 12th chapter. Because Krishna knows our conditioning. So he's giving suggestions in that chapter, in 12th chapter. So this is Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is called Smartavya Satatam Vishnu. Always remember Krishna or Vishnu. Vismartavyo na jatuchit. Never forget Krishna. So it sounds the same. What does it mean? Somebody like to say, what does it mean? Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. What does it mean? Always do activities that will remind you of Krishna, and never do those activities which will make you forget Krishna. So both things have to be there, right? If you want to light a fire, we cannot pour water at the same time, because then the fire will not light, right? Because it's going to take some time. So if we want to light a fire, we have to stop pouring water. So we have to do those activities which are favorable, but at the same time, you have to avoid those things that are not favorable. And what are favorable activities and what are unfavorable activities, that will come in the second and third verse of Nectar of Instruction. We are going to. So sarve vidhi. Vidhi means rules, and nishedh. Nishedh means prohibition. Like we say dhumrapan nishedh. Right? In India, there's a nishedh means prohibition. So every rule and prohibition is kinkara, is servant of this principle, to always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. So Krishna is the origin of Lord Vishnu. He should always be remembered and never forgotten at any time. Of course, we can't do that unless we have very spontaneous love for Krishna. All the rules and prohibitions mentioned in the Shastra should be the servant of these two principles. And what does Prabhupada write in the purport? Here he says, how it is possible. So he says, this is possible when one chants Hare Krishna mantra. Therefore, one must strictly chant the Hare Krishna mantra 24 hours daily. One may have other duties to perform under the direction of spiritual master, but he must first abide by the spiritual master's order to chant a certain number of rounds. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we have recommended that the neophyte chant at least 16 rounds. This chanting of 16 rounds is absolutely necessary if one wants to remember Krishna and not forget him. Of all the regulative principles, the spiritual master's order to chant at least 16 rounds is most essential. So this is very like the Acharya Prabhupada is speaking. Prabhupada, he said one time he called Bhagavad Prabhu. There's a nice memory. He called Bhagavad Prabhu and he said, so can you quote this verse? And Bhagavad Prabhu didn't know. Then Tamal Krishna Maharaj was next to him and he said, so you're not reading my books. Then he said, do you know why I read my books? And Bhagavad Prabhu said, I couldn't say anything, why he's reading his own books. He said, I read my books because when I read my books, I also get something out of it. And then he said, when I sit to write down my books, then Krishna comes and personally dictates to me what to write. So Bhagavad Prabhu was saying, oh, I was sitting with a person who is I'm just separated from God. He's the person who is speaking to God. So I'm in connection with the person who is speaking with God. How? So this, we should not take this lightly, this purports of Prabhupada. And so what he's saying, we should, whatever we can, I mean, it's not like everything we can implement at one time, but we should read with attention and see what he's saying and how we can apply in our life. Okay, so it's already 11 o'clock. I had many more things to say about the mind, but we will keep it for the next time, and then we'll go to Krodha Vegam next time. So, anybody like to say anything? Alankar Prabhu or Preeti or Charuta, who all I can see, others I can't see. Archistita and Madan Mohi.
So this is good. I'm learning a lot now.
Anything else?
So the austerity in spiritual life is to surrender the body, mind, and words and soul to Krishna. Right? That is the real austerity.
Sannyas, we said three dandi sannyas, right? Three dandi means body, BMW, body, mind, and words. And there is a little hook on the top, which is the soul. So body, mind, words, and the soul. Ultimately, sannyas doesn't mean that we have to, that one is officially to accept the order of sannyas. But in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes who is a sannyasi in the first verse. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Anashrita karma phalam karyam karma karotiya sa sannyasi cha yogi cha na nirakri na chakriya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, one who is unattached to the fruits of his work and who works as is obligated is in the renounced order of life, and he is the true mystic, not he who lights no fire and performs no duty. Means when we use our fruits of our work, anashrita means not take shelter. Without taking shelter of our karma phalam, we are doing our duty as we are obligated to do, but when we use it also in Krishna's service, that is a sannyasi. So he says there are many members of International Society for Krishna Consciousness who work very hard in their factories, but they give all that, they use whatever they have earned in Krishna's service, or they give to the Krishna Consciousness movement. They are also sannyasis, even they are working in the factories. So when we use everything that we have, that is Yukta Vairagya also, the definition of Yukta Vairagya. When we use Anasaktasya Vishayan Yatharam Upayunjitaha Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagya Muchyate. So that is also a definition of Yukta Vairagya. When we use everything that we have in Krishna's service, doing that it belongs to Krishna. Okay, so any other thing to say? We'll stop here. Yes, no?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Alankar Prabhu,
Thank you, Prabhu. Yes.
you want to say anything? Any comments?
No, Prabhu.
Braj Kishori Mataji is there. And who else is there? Archistita, Braj, Gop Kumar.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Learning a little bit at a time is really helpful to me, actually. So, yeah, I can remember what you just said. And
So next time we'll discuss all these things, what we
yeah,
okay. I mean, recap, and then we'll go to Krodha Vegam and others. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
See you at Comfest if you're coming. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Thank you,
Hare
Prabhu.
Krishna,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna, everyone.